Folks, welcome to Wani. With us today, we have the wizard himself, Mr. Jordan Rudess of Dream Theater. How are you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing great.
New album, The Astonishing, has, what do I say, astonished us with the breathtaking beauty that's present in the album. How accomplished, does the band feel right now, keeping in mind that the biggest ambitious project of, your career is almost ready to be unleashed to your fans?
Yeah, we're really excited. It's only a couple days away.
Right. With two singles already out, I was wondering, it must have been a difficult choice to figure out which ones to release out of 34 songs, because a single definitely provides a pretty good idea of what's expected out of the album.
Well, sometimes it does. In this case, the first single we released was
The Gift of Music.
It's kind of the first vocal song of the album, and it does tell you in those lyrics. It gives you a nice overview of the concept of just the story, which we thought was kind of a fun thing. So that's why we chose that. And the second song we released not that long ago, which was called Moments of Betrayal, is kind of, again, it is hard to pick something out of that much music, but we felt it was a good balance between kind of like the prog and metal and like virtuosic stuff going on. So we thought it was a nice Dream Theater kind of offering.
Right. That's amazing. With this, it's almost 2+ hours of, let me say, productivity, a big futuristic concept, which is definitely not an easy feat to do. And without doubt, it's the most challenging, Dream Theater album I can, figure out as a fan it is. But were you guys kind of concerned about how it might turn out? Because converting a concept which is, let's say, in somebody's mind into a reality is actually very challenging.
Sure. It's definitely a large offering, and for anybody who wants to try to dig into the story, it'll take a little time to understand what's going on. But I feel like it's a big, almost like a meal for a music fan. There's so much to it, musically, and it's also a big story. And so for fans like Dream Theater fans, it's probably perfect because they want that. They want to dig in and figure out every little thing, and they'll be looking at the artwork and trying to find little hidden things. And I think a lot of our fans are ready for the challenge of investing themselves in a big album like this.
Awesome. And obviously, comparisons to Scenes from the Memory are going to be made, since both the albums are concept-based, which I feel, which is more of a difficult thing for you, which was basically more difficult to work on. Was it Scenes or was it Astonishing? And would it actually be fair for people, or let's say Dream Theater fans, to compare these two albums?
Well, I think that they basically could only compare them in terms of being concept albums. They're both very different albums in many ways. First of all, The Astonishing is 2 hours and 13 minutes long.
Right.
Second of all, The Astonishing has a very detailed and almost classic story, where Scenes from the Memory was more of a looser kind of idea story. It wasn't as laid out as The Astonishing is. Also, where Scenes from the Memory was my first album with the band,
right,
and it's very much just a band kind of recording. The Astonishing features an orchestra and a choir and special guests, and composing the music and putting together The Astonishing was more like doing music for a movie or for a musical
soundtrack.
Matter of fact, the actual experience of composing was totally like that. We were trying to make music that would support the story, allow people to kind of get absorbed in it, whether it be by a mood that we were creating or by certain themes that were tagged to certain characters. We went so far as creating not only an overture but an entr'acte. It's really laid out as a whole show.
That's awesome. John Petrucci said that the basic concept was laid sometime. It came up sometime during 2012 or 2013. But when did he actually explain the concept to you guys? And was it fully formed by then, or it evolved over the period of time?
Yes, well, he had been working on the beginnings of this story about 2.5 years ago, but he only first showed us like kind of where it was at the end of the last world tour. And at that point, he had his story very developed. He showed us then a synopsis of everything. So, you know, he basically brought up the fact that we needed to do another album, and he's been working on this.
Right.
Did we think it would be a good idea for a concept album? So I read it, and I thought it was really good. I was inspired by it. Matter of fact, when I got home from the tour, first thing I did was I just sat at the piano and I composed a bunch of music and I recorded it all, and I sent it all to John as like voice memos, and we started to get together at each other's home studios and start to hash through all the music that I was writing and some of the things that he wrote, because he had some themes in mind as he was developing the story as well. So we did that, and then eventually we got to a point where we were like, okay, well, now we have to go into the studio and just work every day together on this, because it's getting very involved.
Right.
Not only just like in really detailing and finalizing the story, but, you know, in crafting this involved, almost like puzzle, putting the music together. So, and soon after we got into it, we realized it was going to be pretty long. So we knew we were going to want to present it as a whole live show, and to do that, it needed to be substantial.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, in from the technical side of Dream Theater, I would say this is probably less technical, but it's more on the grand scale, the epic, story oriented style, which the music and the story is going, seamless as for that. But, which your technical fans may not like, but will bring in more fans, because this is the most diverse Dream Theater album I have heard so far. So was it a conscious feel to kind of have a less technical feel to it and then let it be more story evolving kind of a sound?
Well, I'm so glad to hear you express that, because I feel like, first of all, I think you're right. In a lot of ways, I feel like, what this album offers is a little bit more breadth. It's more dynamic, maybe because we're trying to tell a story, and there's really like, there's very sweet parts of the story, there's intense parts of the story, there's grand parts, epic parts. We had to create music that expressed those emotions at the time. So based on that, it's not going to be, the album, first of all, is 2 hours and 13 minutes.
Right.
It's not going to be an in-your-face metal experience.
True.
There's certainly metal sections, there's prog sections, orchestral sections, there's really pretty piano sections. There's whatever it takes to tell this story. And I think that Dream Theater, is a band that can not only write a story like that, but create the music to support the scope of that. True. And this album enabled us and myself to go into what I do as a composer and musician and come up with, many more things than I have ever brought to the Dream Theater table before, because it kind of opened of what we do. And I think I'm so proud of first of all, of John and I for composing this, because not only was it a lot of work, but it was a work that we enjoyed so much, and we really reached deep inside ourselves to do this. Wonderful. And I think that anybody who comes and says, oh, it's not, metal enough, whatever, well, you know what, that's fine, and they can go listen to some other band that is driving metal the whole time. Not that I want to lose a fan, but I feel like this is kind of like the next level of Dream Theater, where the band is, matured to a point where we can just make music. And you know what? And the most important thing with Dream Theater is the music that comes from the heart. Because if it wasn't for the ability to write a good music and reach out and touch people's emotions, we would be like every other prog metal band, and we have, a quarter of the fans that we do. And the reason that Dream Theater is so successful today, we have the following that we do, is because of the melodies and the emotion behind the music. And that's and just the fact that we can touch people, and they come to the concert and they sing along with us, and it makes it very different than almost every other like metal or prog metal band that exists.